I am so excited today. We have a special guest on our show, Dr. Heather Bartos. Did I say that right?
You did. Perfect.
Yes. Dr. Heather Bartos, welcome to the show. I'll let you introduce yourself because you have such a varied background, and I'd love for you to explain it in your own words. So welcome.
Varied background. I think that means at a certain age that I've lived a lot of life, that I'm of a certain age where I have enough biography to write me something. I am a gynecologist based out of Dallas, Texas, kind of north of Dallas, actually. And I specialize in perimenopause and menopause care. I'm a former U.S. Navy veteran. And before I went to medical school, I was the oldest girl in my medical school class at 28. I was in marketing and public relations for 6 years. And I drove around Bobcat Goldthwait and Drew Carey in my car to radio stations when I was like 22, 23. I know, right? Life
How
lived,
did you make
see?
that switch? What? How did you go from marketing to med school?
Well, I started doing marketing for the Texas Medical Center. And for people that live kind of outside Texas, we don't realize that Texas has the largest medical center in the world. And so I was following people like DeBakey and Denton Cooley and these kind of bigwigs in the medical world. And I go, you know what? Maybe I want to do this. Like I want to do something that's going to feel like it means something. And so like my dad joked, he goes, do you just kind of wake up one day and say, I think I'll go to medical school? And I said, I mean, that simplifies it, but kind of like, I just was like, I want to do something different. And so I was kind of like, see one, do one. I was like, yeah. And I got into medical school the first try and I was like, this is meant to be. So here I am 20 something years later.
And what did you do in the Navy?
I was a physician in the Navy.
So that was after medical school.
Yes. That is the way I was able at 28 to pay for medical school.
Yes, smart. I know a lot of people that have done that. Yes.
Yeah. And it was good times. I loved being in the military. I wouldn't be in the military today because, nails, hair, all that stuff, you don't really get some options there. But at the time, it was great.
Push-ups? Did you do push-ups?
I did do push-ups. I could never do sit-ups. Sit-ups were my downfall.
See, I can't do push-ups.
And if I had to run, at this age, I don't even want to run if someone's chasing me with a gun. I'm just going to be like, fine, look, just give me a margarita and let me sit down and do this. Because I don't want to run.
So how did you specialize in OBGYN? How did that come about?
Yeah, I actually was considering, I really wanted to do pediatric infectious diseases. So I wanted to do weird illnesses in kids. That's what I walked into. But everyone in medical school starts off with some grand plan like that. I'm going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. And then by the end, everyone's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I had an OB-GYN that came into our room one day and started talking about how she took care of women from like birth till death. And she did medical stuff and surgery stuff. And she did everything. And I go, oh, that is great. And she described the vagina like an orange juice can. And I said, this woman makes sense to me. She's my people. And so I decided to go into OBGYN. And I did OB. I delivered about 5,000 babies in my career. And a few years ago, I was by myself during the pandemic. And I was on call 365, 24/7. And I said, I'm done. I've got to give it up. I got to focus on my 40 plus gals because they are needing someone to shepherd them through this next generation.
Yes. Thank you for doing that. Yes. And wait, we have to rewind a little bit. Orange juice can, vagina, please. What?
Yeah. So
you can't just say that and then switch subjects.
Well, it makes sense because, we're kind of in a culinary vibe here is, that it's not like just a dead end, like it's built like a cylinder. And so she's like, so think of it as a cylinder, not as like just kind of this dead space in there. And when she said, I go, that really kind of made sense. Cause you don't think about vaginas really.
No,
I mean,
not
really
much.
don't. And so I was like, I never thought of my own that way. And then when she said that, I go, it is kind of like, smaller, I hope, than an orange juice can. But definitely,
Yes.
A cylinder. I was like, that makes sense.
Okay. I love that. So did she become your mentor or did you follow her to kind of guide you through the process?
I did. She was in Houston where I trained. And then when I left Houston, I think she's long retired since then, but she was a spicy mama. She had sayings that I'm like, I thought I was spicy. She's spicier.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's how you found your way. And then how did you start with the menopause clinic practice, all the speaking engagements? How did that come about?
Yeah. So, I think it was when I turned 40, which has been a little while ago. And I had my kids later in life. Like I was 39 and 41 when I had my two kids. And I went through fertility with them and all this. And it was kind of like you looked around the waiting room and there was like all this pregnancy stuff, and there's pregnancy books out on the tables, and there's pictures of like Ann Getty's babies like in flower pots, on the thing. And
Yes.
there's like the woman holding her belly and she's like looking down. And I would look at women that either had lost children or couldn't have children. And I always kind of felt, because that was kind of me, right? And then I looked at women that were really 40 plus, and it wasn't until I went and got my first mammogram. And I realized at 40, I was like, oh, I'm like the youngest woman in the room. This rocks, because, I thought this was just it. Like we were all old, but I was like with all these little blue hairs, and I'm like, I'm 40, I'm looking good. And I realized that really once you kind of got past childbearing age, you kind of were forgotten. Like everyone focuses on the pregnant mothers and the getting pregnant and the postpartum period. And then once you stop breeding, it's kind of like you go out to pasture. It's kind of like, yeah, like you're done. And so I just felt something for these women. And I was talking to my OBGYN and I'm like, I have all these symptoms. And she was like, okay, you're older. And I was like, I'm not okay with that answer. I'm just not okay with that answer. There's got to be something more for us at a certain age. And so I wanted my waiting room to be full of women that at midlife, 40 plus, felt like they had a place, like there was a safe place. It was women empowered, but it wasn't all about, the young women, the youth-based culture. It was about everyone.
Right. So I'm in the same boat as you. Had a child at 41, and all of that stuff around perimenopause, menopause, all of my friends were all in the same age bracket. We're all probably the same age as you. And we don't know if it's menopause or not. Is it not? All these symptoms, all these issues, all these problems. And how do we pinpoint? And like, we all know that women's health has not been researched as much as men. So how did you navigate that? Because there isn't a lot of data or a lot of medical history on that. How can we know what to do? Because I know my sister's had heart issues and she's like, is it COVID? Is it menopause? Like, how do we get informed, and where do we go, and how do we talk to our doctors? Because a lot of our doctors have said, stop eating ice cream. You have to exercise more. And it's just frustrating. And we don't have that, support that we have from people like you. So how do like the average person who's not in a, massive medical community or in a city with great support, how do we find out more?
Yeah, I always say like, I'm assuming that you're a Gen Xer. I'm a Gen Xer, very proud to be for once, because I think Gen Xs are having their moment, and I'm kind of all about that. Like I'm on TikTok and Facebook. I'm like, another Gen X reel. I'm like, thank you. Although I always think they look much older. But anyway, so I always say our mothers didn't talk about this. In fifth grade, we all, and they still do, have the talk, right? Where they separate the boys and the girls, and they talk about periods and what's to come in puberty and like what to expect. They don't have that for us going in the reverse, because this is what this is. It's reverse puberty. Like we're literally coming out of it. So if you have a daughter or a son that's 6th, 7th, 8th grade or going through it, and you're looking at them going, man, they're a real asshole right now, or they're this, that is you're just going out and they're coming in. And so it's the shift of hormones that really throws us off. And since our mothers didn't talk about it, because they didn't have medical practitioners that knew what to do with it. It's not taught in medical school or residency. So when we get out, and the few menopause specialists that there are in this country, it's self-taught. It's been a passion project, because there is not a lot of information out there. And my mother she had a hysterectomy at 40. They threw her some Premarin, because they took out her ovaries at 40, because you don't need those anymore, so, never mind that they produce hormones for you still for like 10 years. They took those out because that's the days that you went in for an abdominal hysterectomy. They took everything out through your abdomen, and you stayed in the hospital for a week, and they threw some Premarin at her, some estrogen only on the way out. They said, okay, you're good. You're good. Peace out. And it's such a, that's back when really males dominated the gynecology world. And although I'll tell you, I have women that come in and they've been to 3 or 4 gynecologists, including women, and they're told, it sounds like depression. It sounds like you're eating too much. You're not working out enough. And there's a lot of gaslighting. And I know that word is so kind of probably overused these days, but that's exactly what it is. It's medical gaslighting it's because they don't know. It's not like they're trying to be assholes about it. They just don't know. They don't know enough to say, oh, well, there are 33 recognized symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. So it sounds like you have some of those. Palpitations are a symptom of perimenopause and menopause, besides just the hot flashes that we kind of joke about, or the lack of sex drive. There's a whole bunch of others: burning tongue, zaps, where you get like these kind of like electrical current kind of things that run through you, skin changes, voice deepening. All these things are recognized symptoms of menopause by the Menopause Society. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's going to be way more than 33 eventually. Palpitations being a big one. What we do at menopause is our heart risk now goes up and we accelerate to be equal to that of men. So when we thought all this time, we're young, our hearts are good. When we hit menopause, boom, we catch up right to the guys. So I always send my women that are around menopause, go get just a basic cardiac exam. Just make sure everything's okay to start with. And that's scary to hear, but 2/3 of us die of some kind of heart-related illness, heart disease, stroke. And the other third's cancer. But we all worry about breast cancer so much. We're like, breast cancer, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But 1 in 8 of us get breast cancer. We don't die of it, but 2/3 of us die of heart disease. So that's why I'm like, get your heart checked out, girl. It's no shame, no problem. Let's just get a baseline. There's a lot of information out there on social media. That's kind of where we've done most of our kind of edutainment before. I'm actually floored by how many women around the country and Canada have lack of access to someone that will do this care for them. So I've actually created a course that's really kind of like what I do in my first consult. It is everything that you need to know about perimenopause versus menopause, how to know when you're in each, all the symptoms. It has a downloadable checklist. So you can take it to your provider and say, really? I have 32 of 33 of these. So, yes. And it's really about what blood work that you want to order. And it's about what those blood tests mean. It's really about what to bring in terms of like, if you want HRT, hormone replacement therapy, or alternative therapies, either one. But it really gives you all the background that you can't get in your 15-minute doctor's appointment because they don't know or they don't have time. And I wanted to do this for women because I realized they don't have that. And so if you walk in with all these things to your doctor and you say, I want these labs, I have these symptoms, and this is what my insurance covers for this, and I want to use some natural stuff for this, you've disarmed them. There's nothing they can say at that point because you've come in an agent for your own health. You become the director at that point. Instead of being like, well, they told me I had to wait. We don't accept that. And I actually even talk about how to avoid gaslighting doctors and how to work around that. So I'm probably giving away trade secrets in this thing, but there's so many women that come that are like, I just can't, they won't listen to me. They've been to 4 or 5 gynecologists, including women gynecologists. And I'm like, a woman told you that? Wait, is she 30 or is she 50? And they're like, she's like 40 something. I'm like, she should know better. But gynecologists and OB-GYNs in general are very black and white people. It's, are you pregnant? Are you not pregnant? Is it a vaginal delivery? Is it a C-section? Are you preterm? That's what they're trained in. And so this is the gray. I don't like 50 Shades of Grey. It's not my favorite book, but this is the 50 Shades of Grey that really we're talking about. This is the art of medicine at this point, is this kind of specialty, perimenopause and menopause, because there is, when is it perimenopause versus when do you finally get to be menopause? And after menopause, what are you called then? And so it's the art, which is what I love to do. The art is the beautiful part of where things are.
Amazing. So yeah, I don't have the hot flashes, but I have other things like after I ovulate, I have like an array of symptoms and I feel different. I feel off. I feel everything after my ovulation, but I don't have the hot flashes. So someone like me, and this is a sentence I keep saying it, tell me if this is wrong. I say, once I get the hot flashes, I'll go on HRT. And I don't do anything. I have some vitamins on my desk here, bio, B12, folic acid D. Like, what should someone be doing as a baseline? Like, you hit your 40s, what should you be incorporating into your diet? I know I put flax on everything for me and my kid. What are your like best basics to, right? And is that wrong to say, I'll wait till I get the hot flashes?
No, it's totally fine to say that because that's what we've been taught menopause is. Only about 4/5 of women will get hot flashes. So 20% of us will never get hot flashes. One of the biggest symptoms that I see women get, that is the reason that I now started taking estrogen, is joint pain. So when you get out of bed, you're like, God, and that's what the old people say, I got the rheumatism, and I see women come in with joint pain because there's estrogen receptors in the joints. And so when that starts to go, a lot of women will say, oh, this is just me getting older and my hands hurt, my wrists hurt, my hips or my knees hurt. And sometimes we can get rid of that with a little bit of estrogen. And so that's why I say like it's important to have the whole checklist. You can say, because that's what we're led to believe, the hot flashes are it. I love vitamin D. We're mostly deficient in vitamin D because we're all trying to protect our skin, right? We're like, we don't want age spots or wrinkles. And so vitamin D is super important. I think a great probiotic, gut health is essential 40 plus. We have probably destroyed our gut by the age of 40. This is kind of new area of science because gut health is really our second brain. And so that depends on how we absorb our nutrients and how we are able to use them, and whether we have a leaky gut or we have, too much bacteria in the gut. So gut health is huge. So I always say, everyone, probiotics, prebiotics. So, kefirs, kombuchas, sauerkrauts, kimchi, all those great kind of foods, adding those in. The flax is important because flax is a fiber. Too much flax and you'll be pooping your pants. So yes, the flax meal is great. I always tell women, I'm like, start with no more than a tablespoon. And they're like, well, I'm really backed up. Trust me, no more than a tablespoon. And someone will surely do 2. And they'll be like, I blew out my pants the other day. And I am a fan of food-based nutrients. Like, I'm a fan of that. That's just, to me, that's the way it should go. So when we talk about things like selenium, which is good for thyroid, and iodine, which is good for thyroid, and our thyroids can go wrong as we get older. And that's what can sometimes cause the hair thinning and the weight and the tiredness and the sluggishness and all that. When we talk about conversion of thyroid hormone, it requires selenium and it requires iodine. The government started iodizing salt back in the 1920s. And that's that Morton sea salt with the little girl with the cute little umbrella. I had to have a yellow umbrella when I was a kid because I thought she was so cute. And so now, though, we all eat Himalayan sea salt and Celtic gray salt, and I have lava salt in my house. Like, why do I need lava salt? But I had it. And so those are not, they're not iodized. And before the government did that, there was a lot of goiters or enlarged thyroids back in people. Because if you don't live by the water, if you don't live in Japan where you're eating a lot of fish and seaweed, you're not getting a lot of iodine. So my favorite way to do that is to do sea kelp granules. So, yes, you could take iodine supplements, but at some point I feel like we become almost vending machines for supplements. We're just like putting more and more in. And if the gut is already a little bit damaged, which I'm sure mine is, I'm sure yours is, it has to be, then why not get it from food sources? So one of my favorite ways for selenium is 1 Brazil nut a day. 1 Brazil nut a day. You can get them in bulk at most health food stores. And you can put them in your purse. You can put them in your car. You can put them at work. And just eating 1 Brazil nut a day, which is good fat, good protein, is all the selenium that you need. Men need selenium for their prostates. We don't have to worry about that problem, but it's good for thyroid. And I get those kind of sea kelp granules. They're on Amazon. Girl, if it's not on Amazon, it looks like a pepper shaker, like a little pepper shaker. It's about this tall and kind of like maybe, 4 or 5 inches tall. And it looks like it would be with a salt and pepper shaker, kind of like the salt spices. And it's usually at the health food stores, but Amazon I know carries it because I don't want to go in my car. I want Jeff Bezos to deliver it to my house. I have it on subscribe and save too, because I guess at this point I'm just like, let's conserve energy. But you can put it on everything. And I put it on my kids' foods too, because it looks like pepper. It does not taste like seaweed for the people that are like, seaweed. Like my husband hates seaweed, but I can put it on his food. He has no idea. He's like, oh, this, nobody tastes it. So you put a little flax, a little sea kelp granules, just you put it on the table. It looks like pepper. You can put it in a pepper, like a little pepper mill or pepper shaker, and people would just think they're pepper. Those are two ways to get food-based nutrients. Because the last thing I want is women to say, oh, I'm now taking 16 supplements a day to get my health in order. I try to say, let's not do that. Let's do food sources.
And fish, is that the main thing? Like fish, mackerel, tuna?
Fish, mackerel, tuna, salmon. I always try to watch out for farmed versus fresh. I know it's a tough call these days because like I'm in Texas, I'm landlocked. And so, I fly in from Boston, like seafood when I'm feeling treaty for myself. I don't do it all the time, but I try to stay away from farmed seafood if I can. But you get what you can while it's in season and you can freeze it.
We're based in Canada, but our listeners are all around the world. You're based in the US. Do you see any patterns like globally, like some countries are really much further ahead? I always find that when I'm in Europe, I'm like, oh gosh, we're so behind. Do you find women in other countries have different patterns of menopause, like education sources? What is your like view? Like, are we behind 10 years, like from Sweden, or are we like leading the pack in terms of, talking about that?
It's a great, great, great question. And it's kind of a two-parter. The US and Canada and UK lead the world in terms of pharmaceuticals, right? We were on the front lines of vaccines and this, and we're great at that because there's money in pharmaceuticals. I mean, I remember when Ozempic first came out, we couldn't get it here. We would actually write it in Canada, and Canada would ship it over until US Customs was like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And so, the pharmaceutical companies make big money. They don't make big money off of hormones. They don't. They've been around forever. And so there's not a lot of research then based on hormonal care. What's interesting is there's a lot of cultural differences with regards to menopause around the world. And it has to do a little bit with how women are treated when they're young. So, think 30, 20. Like for instance, the Mayan culture. We don't often think of the Mayan culture, but it's just south of us, right? We just keep heading south from both of us and it's there. Menopause usually happens a little bit earlier, around age 44. And the average age in Western countries tends to be around 51. So they go a little bit earlier. But the Mayan culture believes that women are wise people, but that every month that they bleed, they're bleeding out their wisdom. And so when a woman hits menopause, she now actually is considered an equal in the culture. She now is not bleeding out her wisdom, she's keeping it. So you think about like First Nations people, Native Americans, that the older women sit around the tribe and they're giving the advice. Those are the menopausal women. You get a status upgrade when you hit menopause. Same in Asia. The Japanese love the elders. They respect the elders. So there's actually a party that a lot of women will throw called Kanenki in Japan. God, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I say it all the time, but I'm sorry if I'm not. I'm like, I know it's what it looks like. I'm sure I have a really bad Texas accent with it, but it's a party to celebrate the second spring, which is what the Canadians do not call it that. The Chinese call it that, second spring. It's the halftime show is what I call it. It's the chance to sit there and go, okay, I've made it this far. What do I want for the next 50 years? This is a chance to redo and reconnect and realign with what you want. Because for the first time, you're not worried about trying to become a mom, right? You're kind of past that. Even if you had your kids later like us, they're at a point usually where they're pretty self-sufficient for the most part, right? But we're at the point where it's just us. We're worried about just us. And so these cultures love, Middle East especially, they love menopausal women. They finally, from a religious standpoint, can actually be a part of the table. because it's unclean to touch someone who's menstruating. So for once, these women in other cultures actually get to be esteemed. That is not the case in Western civilizations, developed countries, because we are a youth-based culture. We look at the Kardashians and we look at, these influencers who are 20 on TikTok and have their tits way up here and they're, and they have no wrinkles and they have this. And we're like, we all want to look like that. That's what our culture tends to worship, for lack of a better word. And so what I tell women is stop looking at those women. What we want to look at is the women above us that have exceeded expectations through midlife, the Betty Whites, right? Who at 96, 98 was still funny as hell. She spent half of her career in menopause, more than probably. Queen Elizabeth worked until 2 days before she died, and she sucked it up through menopause because, again, ladies don't talk about it, and the queen doesn't talk about anything. And so Helen Mirren, having her biggest moments now, Andie MacDowell, Viola Davis, Angela Bassett, who looks better now than when she was in house till they got her groove back. So there are women that are paving this way for us, but we have to look at them and say, that's what I want to be. That is who I want to be. I want to be Angela Bassett. And I want to be or Michelle Yeoh, who won her first Oscar at 60 something. I want to peak after midlife. I don't want to peak in high school. I don't want to peak at 20 or 30. I want to peak now. And when we think that way, then the culture starts to shift, but it's going to take our generation to do it.
And that leads me to my next question, because we are always looking back to the 20-year-olds and trying to be, and I see like all these young women that all look the same now, the same makeup, hair, plastic surgery, whatever they're doing to all look like the Kardashians, which is horrific in itself. But I was always told, I don't know if it's like told or just, the commentary is that once you hit menopause, you don't have sex anymore. You dry up, and that's why your husband, in subcultures has a girlfriend. Demystify the sex and menopause and perimenopause, because I think a lot of women are like, okay, when that is done, then we're going to have to figure something out. Or I don't even know.
We're going to
I thought that was true.
We're going to get a sister wife and she
we're going to get a...
Well, it is true that sex drive can take a little bit of a nosedive as we get to the menopause age. So remember, perimenopause is 5 to 10 years before menopause. Average age in this country and Canada would be 51. So we're talking as early as the early 40s. And part of that is because we're busy. Most women these days we're working full time, we're moms full time. There's a lot of crap going on. And so when that's happening, our brain feels like we're stressed. And it does not know whether we're being chased by lions through the Sahara. Are there lions in the Sahara? I'm not sure. Through the Serengeti, or if we're just driving down, a busy road. It doesn't know the difference. It just knows we're stressed. And when we're stressed, cortisol shoots up and it shunts away from sex hormones. And we don't want to reproduce, because if there's lions chasing us, let's not sit down and have sex so we can have a baby. We want to keep going. The other thing that happens is nature is a woman. Nature is a woman for sure, but she's pretty freaking wise. And what she understands is that we don't want to get pregnant at menopause at 50. The risks to mom, the risks to baby are much higher, right? The chance of a down baby after 45 becomes almost 1 in 7 women. And of course, the risks to mom for heart problems, hypertension, preeclampsia really start to shoot up. So really geriatric mothers, and that's what they're called. I was a geriatric
mother too.
As well. But once we get into those even like 50-year-olds, that is high risk for both mom and baby. Nature doesn't want us to do that. So nature first usually will tank testosterone on us first, meaning that we tend to not want to have sex. And it's a protective device to avoid just wanting to go have a bunch of sex to get pregnant. That is the whole reason we have a sex drive when we're 20, 30. And that's why you want to have sex every time you ovulate, because nature is telling you to go have sex.
Have a baby. Yes.
Go get pregnant. That's your whole purpose for being here. And so when that starts to kind of dwindle, I say, that's normal. It's normal to not have a sex drive where you're like wanting to horn dog it up every, 3-4 times
every
a week.
night.
Once we get past menopause, though, and that's no longer an option, a lot of women will start to find a rekindling of that sex drive because
Ah,
the pressure and the concern, especially like in Texas, if you have a mistake, baby, tough, you're having it. I mean, there's no other options for you. And so when there's no bleeding and no breeding, I always say those two things are off the table. It really opens up sex a whole nother week a month. And you're not worried about, what if I get pregnant? What if I get pregnant? It's really kind of how guys feel all the time. So a lot of them will tell me that after they get through it, they're like, my sex life got better because we could have sex anytime we wanted to. And I didn't have to worry about
you
using
don't have
birth
your
control.
period and you're not feeling crappy before.
And you're not feeling crappy
Oh.
before, and you're not worried, oh gosh, what if I get pregnant? When is my period coming? Is it late? We're done with all that. And so a lot of times it's very freeing, and freedom is sexy. We all feel kind of sexier when there's freedom of kind of choice here. So I find a lot of women, once they get into menopause, so they've met that year with no periods and they're fully in menopause, they actually start to really awaken again sexually. And then the
I
sex
love
is going to be the
that.
best ever. So we don't have to go get a sister wife right away.
Okay, good. I'm glad you cleared that up. Also, because I come from an Italian background, nobody talked about anything. Sex, menopause, cancer, nothing.
Nope.
It's what I call the Sicilian secrets in our family. We don't talk about anything. Nothing. Everyone's fine. It's ever great. You're great. We're great. Someone drops dead. Oh, they were great. We're great. We're great. Yeah. So now tell me, you have a different kind of viewpoint too, because you're also a Reiki master, energy healer, and a physician. Are you like the black sheep in the medical community? How does that work? Because and so many people are embracing this, especially women, especially, women of our age. We are looking for alternatives to, complement and combine with our medical practice. But how does that work for you? And how did that work for you being like a woman in medicine and in energy? Like, how does that?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah. I was kind of raised in a kind of very alternative medicine kind of household. And so I've always kind of enjoyed it. I went to a shaman when I was like in my 20s, and back before it was even cool to do. I just was like, oh, there's someone called a shaman. I want to go see what they're all about. And I did not become a Reiki master until, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago, because I just really felt like it was a missing component in healthcare. Energy healing and sound healing and all these different healing modalities, they're really, really good. And from a scientific standpoint, I can actually say what they do is they lower us into a parasympathetic state, a restful state. When we're in a restful state, our body can then function better. We actually don't do that very well. We're always in fight or flight. And so when we can practice that, which is kind of what yoga does too, it reflexes that muscle, sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. And the more you do it, the faster you can go into that parasympathetic state on your own. But also what I think the energy healing has really taught me in doing it to women is we have a lot of traumas. We have a lot of traumas as women, as an archetype of women, and also as being ourselves as women. And so it's really important to kind of see where that is with you. So I, like a lot of women, I have a weird thing about my throat being touched. I don't like it. It weirds me out. Like when I watch something, I am like, it's weird. And I went to, when I was training, someone goes, well, you probably were executed as a witch in a past life because they strangulated witches, or women were beheaded. And so I was like, wow, I never thought about that before.
Yeah.
But also as women, we are used to our voices being clamped down. Don't speak. We don't speak about things. We don't talk about Bruno, as they say in Canto.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it. And so when that chakra right here gets kind of pushed down over and over, we lose our voice, and voice meaning just our voice, but also meaning our ability to say what it is we want and to do. And I find that's really clogged. Mine's actually acting up right now because I touched my own throat. Like I'm holding my own throat. I don't like it. Like if my husband or any of my kids touch it, I'm like, don't touch my neck. It weirds me out. So I probably was multiple times beheaded or guillotined or something. If you believe in that stuff, which I think I kind of do. But a lot of us have, crown chakras, third eye chakras. Heart is closed on a lot of women because we've been traumatized before. Root is a big one for women, especially with infertility. It's clogged or if they have period problems. And so it's an extra kind of modality to help it really does become then mind, body, spirit medicine. Because I can write a prescription, but that's not the answer to everything. Sometimes it's deeper. To say that we know it all because there's a RX I can send to Walgreens is egotistical. It's an ego-based thing that I can cure you. And I may be able to help you, but really it's your path. And I'm just kind of like the doula, right? Or the Sherpa here to kind of say, let's see what else will work. And sometimes if we do an energy session and we do a sound bath healing and we do some basic hormones, whatever it is we put together that is really bespoke for that woman, it makes such a difference because it once again empowers that woman to be in charge of her own body and health and spirit.
I love
so
that.
yes, I am a black sheep.
Yeah.
I'm considered a freak in the world of medicine.
I'm sure.
And I love it.
Some doctors are like, oh, there she is.
I know. They think I'm woo-woo and I'm fine with that because that's the great thing about 50 is it's called the F at 50s, right? You just don't care anymore.
Don't care.
Like at 30, it would have bothered me. And I got shamed in a medical school class at 30 because I said that chiropractors did good things. And this kid came at me and was like, oh my gosh, that's not even real medicine. I was like, I thought chiropractors were pretty mainstream at this point. Like I wasn't even out there in some of my shamanic
they're not
stuff.
like, reflexologists.
And I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop talking now. And then at some point I go, you know what? I'm not going to stop talking about this because this is important to me. Like I have my sound bowl back here. I have my crystals up here. I have a lapis. I have a candle because to me, that's part of how I keep myself safe and healthy.
Yeah. I have to tell you something. When I was 20, I had a car accident, a very bad car accident. And I managed to recover fully, but I kept having recurring neck pain. And I kept, going to all these doctors around. I was living in the UK. And one doctor I met who was practicing both like Reiki and massage. And he was an MD too. And he was kind of like yourself. And he just looked at me and he's like, you're fine. It's something else. It's something else. And I was homesick and I was, was having all these other issues, emotional issues. And he just kept saying, you're healed. Your neck is healed. You're okay. I'm going to send you to 4 massages and it's not physical. It's in your head. And I was 20 something floored. And I looked at him and I cried and cried and cried. And he's like, there you go. See, it's something. It's not your body. It's here. And he was kind of like one of the first, like 20 years ago to do that. And it stuck with me every day. I always remembered him. And I was like, I was just holding the stress and tension in this area, but he's, the x-rays and everything were fine and it was healed. And so, yeah, I think that is a huge thing. Like all the chakras that you're holding stuff in. Once somebody says it to you, then you just feel that release and you just are like, oh my God, I do have that, trauma from a miscarriage or from, things that have happened to me in the past. So it's so much needed. And it is not prescribed enough or mainstream. It should be covered by most plans. But I think when people can actually accept those and get into that, then there is such a huge benefit mentally, physically, and spiritually. So thank you for doing what you do because it is needed in the community.
Well, you bring up a really good point and you took what he said really, really well, but I always try to make sure I say, just because it's in your head does not mean you're crazy. Because a lot of women feel like, well, I'm just crazy. I mean, all my things are normal. I must be crazy. And it sounds like he did a great job making sure that wasn't what you thought. But someone I have to really look, I'm like, I'm not saying that you're crazy. It's not like it's in your head in terms of, it's like it's in your heart, right? It's in your soul energy body because women hear it's in your head and they go, oh, okay, she thinks I'm crazy because they've heard that from other doctors before,
Yeah.
Oh, honey, you're fine. You're fine. Just, come back whenever, your heart falls out of your body and it's hanging out by a cord, you're fine. Yeah.
Instead of saying, what else is bothering you? Because it could be, I hope that intersection of, mind and body gets stronger with the medical community. And I feel like some naturopaths are really doing that well and some doctors like yourself are doing that well, but then others like doctors, friends of mine, and, one of my doctors is like, oh, you're just eating too much ice cream. Oh, you're fine. And I think you're overreacting. Just go home and
I
take a pill.
There are so many different kinds of doctors, right? There's, the people that do, heart transplants. And I'm not really too concerned if they're not into energy healing and raking. I just want them to do the heart transplant. I want them to do a good job.
Focus on your job. Yeah.
And that's fine. And then, but that's where we want to start with those primary care doctors, the first line, the second line, the right people being like, this is an option that we haven't considered. That's more in that preventative field. Right. A neurosurgeon. Yeah. I mean, if you're operating on my head because I just, took off half my head in a car accident, fix it. Just fix it. And then I will go to someone else to handle everything else. But yeah, and those people are not capable of really being in the energetic space. And that's okay. Because we need people that are trauma surgeons and we need people that can do those things. And, even people that are like in the hospital taking care of very sick people. Although most major cancer centers, the big ones, at least in the US, have Reiki practitioners on staff.
Oh, wow.
So I always think that for things that are chronic, like cancers, chronic kidney disease, these things, they do well when we add these energy components because some of the chronicity could be because there's some blockages and such.
Right. Yeah. So powerful meditation, all that stuff. Yeah. Okay. Herbs. Did we touch on that with food or what are your thoughts on herbs?
I love herbs. I love herbs and I do love oils. I will say that is great for the woman who's having mild symptoms. If you're coming in, you're hot flashing 25 times a day and, you're not able to get out of bed. I tell women we're probably past the herbal stage at this point. And what I say, because a lot of women, I live in an area where a lot of women are very into, a more natural approach. I say, let me get you feeling better for just like a year or two, and then we can back to the natural approach. I think that Vitex chasteberry, black and blue cohosh, these are routinely used in Europe. And they are great. Like for the woman who's 47, who's having, a few hot flashes a week. Wild yam cream is available on Amazon. I don't make any money off of Amazon. I swear to you, I don't. I just spend money there. I don't make any money there. Jeff can verify that. Wild yam cream is the only natural source of progesterone in the world, and you can buy it over the counter on Amazon. And you use it usually when you're menstruating, the second half of your cycle. So day one being the day you're reaching for a Diva cup or a pad or some kind of product. And then 2 weeks later would be day 14, and you would start your wild yam cream then, and you would put it usually like a dollop, like a fingertip pea size, on your inner thigh or on your inner forearm, and alternate sites every day for 2 weeks and then stop. Sometimes that can help with the heavy periods as we get closer to perimenopause. Sometimes it's not enough. And so I tell them, like, we can start with whatever. Maca root is, it's both a food and an herb. So I'll put that in there. It's actually Peruvian. So it kind of goes back to that Mayan culture. And it can be helpful for testosterone to a certain level. So I have no problem with any woman that's like, what natural alternatives do I have? What else can I do that's not big pharma? What I do tell women is that the progesterone that we put you on at menopause, and I love progesterone. It's my favorite. It's like Jan from the Brady Bunch. She's the forgotten sister, but she's really, Jan goes deep, and she's a ride or die girl. Progesterone is what makes us feel so sleepy. We can sleep anywhere when we're pregnant. When we're pregnant, we have it 100 times our normal level. And in the old days, once you had a uterus, you don't need it. You don't need it. And that's men saying that nature only came up with a hormone that did one thing, to protect your uterus. And that's not what nature did. Nature knows better than that. So progesterone helps with sleep. It helps with anxiety and depression at menopause. It helps with a lot of symptoms. And the prometrium, which is progesterone that we micronized progesterone that we give at menopause, is actually bioidentical. It's body identical. It is created from a natural source. So even though it is a prescription, it is made from natural products. So it's kind of one of those things where I have to tell them, like, it actually, you can get it at your pharmacy, and it actually is bioidentical. Estrogen used to be made, and they still have it, I believe, Premarin. is named such, at least in the US, it's named that because it was made from pregnant mare urine. So it became Premarin. And it was made from the urine of pregnant horses. And they were able to extract the estrogen from it and create Premarin. So in some ways, some of these things actually are natural. Nowadays, I always say natural isn't always better, but we have to go by how significant the symptoms are and also cost. In the US, for example, like bioidentical hormones, I had a woman come in that was spending $300 a month on what we called bioidentical hormones, where she went to a compounding pharmacy and they made it all for her. And I said, yeah, it's a lot of money a year to be spending. And she's like, and I said, we can probably take some of these to the regular pharmacy and then save some of them for the compounding. So we kind of went through the list about what she wanted to keep. But she didn't want to spend $300 a month.
Right.
I can think of a lot of good things I can buy.
How do you know what's working for you or not? Because everyone's like, I'm on the medicine, but I'm tweaking it. Do you just how you feel, or do you diary?
Yeah. So what I do is I will always start people on the lowest dose I can. So I'll always say lowest dose, whatever that is. And I'll even start women with, if I do like a pill, I'll start them with, I'll say take half of the pill and take it for 2 weeks and then see what you feel like. Usually in that time, they come back to go over labs with me and they'll say, it's a little bit better, but I'm not feeling great yet. And we may say, okay, let's try the whole pill for the next month or so. And so I always start the lowest dose we need, because when we're young, 30, we're still young at 50. When we're young at 30, birth control pills are way up here. They're at the ceiling. We have to suppress ovulation. So they're higher doses of hormones. At menopause, the ovaries have moved to Florida. They're retired. They're just sitting by the beach. I say old ovaries don't die. They just go retire somewhere. And so we have to just replace what they left us. And so it's very much less hormone than a birth control pill. So I have people that come at 50 and they're still on a birth control pill because that's what their doctor gave them. I go, get off the birth control pill. Stop. Unless you're really worried about pregnancy because your mom had 6 kids at 50, let's not do the birth control pill. It's just too much hormone. And then we worry about breast cancer risks and those kind of things. So then we try to kind of go down to the very, very lowest dose and build up from there. And so, yeah, you'll be like, oh, wow, my symptoms are so much better. I feel great. I feel like my energy's back. Because there's steroid hormones, sex hormones or steroid hormones, it doesn't always work like the next day. So it's not like a hypertension medicine where like your blood pressure is better the next day. It's going to take a while for it to work, kind of like an antidepressant. Ironically, we can get women off of most antidepressants if we get their hormone levels better. So sometimes I'll say, let's get your hormones levels up, and then we're going to start weaning down those antidepressants. And so somewhere like, I'll take the hormones if I can get off my Zoloft or my antidepressant because I don't want to be on this forever.
Right. Amazing. Let's talk about food. We're a culinary podcast.
I've been ready for the food part.
Okay.
So excited about food. I love food.
How do you nourish you and your family? Just a little quick, what's your favorite foods?
So I came from, and I'll go back to my Gen X-ness. I came from a family where it was a very restrictive food family, and it was with the 70s and 80s, and so it was Clean Plate Club because there were people starving in some other country.
Yeah, we had
the shame
Can't
club.
Leave
really,
until you clean your plate. Yeah.
If you don't like what we're serving, this is what we're serving. Eat it.
Yeah.
And you can sit at the table till it's done.
Yes.
So the lights will be out. You'd be sitting
Gen X
there
thing, yeah.
picking at cold, whatever it was, for hours. And so I always said when I had kids that I was not going to do that because I had food problems my whole life. I had this weird relationship with food where I was like, and I was overweight for periods of time because I was like, oh, I'm free to eat whatever I want to.
Yeah, there's kids starving.
A very bad relationship with food, even though I love food to death. But so when I decided to nourish my family, I said, I'm not going to have any rules about that. I'm done. So the rules are there's no rules. So if I have one kid who will eat everything under the sun, I can serve, I can serve shrimp scampi or something crazy. I mean, anything. And he's all about it. He loves it. The weirder, the better. And I have a daughter who's 14 who is like, that's not a chicken nugget. And so I now just kind of, so I always kind of say like, I pull out everything at night And I say, here's the larder. Help yourself.
There we go. It's a buffet every night.
It's like that every night. I'm like, we always have leftovers. So I'm like, and whatever leftovers no one else wants, I give them to my husband because he'll eat, I'm like, I made you a plate.
Mikey will
He's
eat
like,
it.
Great, I'll eat it. So he always gets the really crappy leftovers. And then we have chickens. So whatever we don't eat goes to the chickens.
Amazing.
So that's kind of how I nourish him is I just have rules. And sometimes am I cringing? Because I'm like, I do make her sometimes, I sometimes substitute those Impossible chicken nuggets for her because I'm like, yeah, they're chicken nuggets. They're chicken, right? With apostrophe.
Does she notice?
She likes them.
Okay.
She likes them. So she's okay with it. And I'm like, what vegetable will you eat this week?
Yes, just
She's
tell
like,
Mom.
Oh, I love cucumbers and tomatoes. Great. We'll have cucumbers and tomatoes.
Every day.
And so I really, but I'm like, inside, I'm like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Because I don't want them to be like me where I'm like, still have the urge to clean everything off my plate. Still, after years of working on it, I'm like, gotta clean that plate. There's people in Ethiopia that don't have food. My food's not going to those people in Ethiopia.
There must have been like a PSA for all parents to say that to every kid in our generation.
That's why I say the Gen Xers are going to change everything because we were screwed up. So we're going to be like, we're not doing that. We're not playing this game this time.
I know. And you catch yourself. You're like, there are kids. I'm like, okay, just if you're done eating, just put your plate in the sink.
There are wonderful children around the world and they don't want your food.
Love to eat broccoli. Yes. And tell me a fantastic meal you've had recently. What did you eat? Where were you?
Oh, so my birthday was not too long ago and we went to, so one of my favorite foods is, I love Japanese food. I love sushi. And we went to this place and they lost our reservation for my birthday. So my husband's like, oh crap, I screwed up. We sat at the bar and they kept bringing us extra things. And because I think they realized that there was a little bit of a screw up, but it was a birthday. And we watched them like literally cut like these fresh things of sushi right there and sear them. And it was so interactive. Every bite was amazing. Every bite was amazing.
Where was that? Is that in Texas?
Yeah. Believe it or not, we actually have some good, I know, we're not just barbecue. I'm not a fan of barbecue actually. So I'm like, I always end up leaving smelling like I was barbecue pitted myself. So my hair smells like it and everything. So I know like that. But it was the best. And they brought it out the right rhythm. Like it wasn't, oh, here's all like Cheesecake Factory. Like, here's all your stuff at one time. It was brought out. We savored it. Then they took that away. Then they brought the next thing. And it was like, it just built on itself like a great story or great sex. Like it just kind of was, there was foreplay. There was some different things happening. And I was like, it was a 2.5 hour meal. And it was fantastic.
What's the place called?
It's called Ebisu. So it's Ebesu. And it's the ice. My husband loves Japanese whiskey, and so he had Japanese whiskey.
Ooh.
The ice was imported from Japan. I don't understand how you do that. I'm like, was the water imported from Japan? And then you just froze it? But the guy was very sweet. He goes, this ice is imported from Japan. And I was like, okay, whatever you say.
And if you could hold a party, like a dinner party, elaborate dinner party, no holds barred, no budget, who would you invite? What would you serve? Who would cater? Would you cook?
Oh my gosh. I do love to cook, but I am a terrible baker. I cannot bake. I will not bake because every dish I make is not reproducible. Like it's just whatever I have. Like I love trash can food, which sounds terrible, but like, what do I have in here that I can do? So it's almost like that. There was a Food Network show where they gave people 5 ingredients in a bag under $10. And they used to have them like, they had to make a 4-course meal out of it.
Yeah.
And I loved that show. I loved that show because I was like, what can you make in like 2 hours, 5 ingredients? You don't even know what they're going to be. Go. So I kind of love this like throw it together kind of thing. Like I look in the freezer in the fridge. I'm like, okay, what can I have some of this. I have some Jarlsberg cheese. I have some of this.
Same.
What can I do with it? That's my favorite way to cook. I hate recipes. I love reading cookbooks and I love reading recipes, but I don't want to follow any rules.
That's like, me. I just look at them for the photos and the ideas. And then I'm like, I cannot follow this little list of
Yeah. No, I'm like, and then I get ahead and I go, I realize I skipped 2 ingredients, like 2 back. And I'm like, well, crap. Now I've ruined the dish. So I just like to have it all. And then I'm like a mad scientist, just like throwing it all together. So that's probably what I would do is like have guests bring like a bag of ingredients that I wouldn't know what was in there, and then like throw it all together and just like see what I could do. And probably some of it would suck and that'd be fine. But I generally like
Are
to
you an Aries?
believe it, I'm a Pisces.
Oh, you're on the cusp.
I know.
Okay.
The fish, right? Hence the fish, hence the
Mhm.
sushi.
Sushi, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
Who's
that's
at your
what I
dinner
would love.
party?
I would have, certainly my 11-year-old child would be there because he eats everything. And he'd be like cheering me on. Like, the other night, he's like, I want to make dinner. Can you bring home these ingredients? And he goes, I'm going to make a bussin, because that's what the young kids say, right? Bussin coleslaw. And I said, I think we have coleslaw at the house. Like, there's cabbage already shredded. Like, can you just,
Wait, what's bussin?
bussin is like what the Gen Alphas call like cool. It's
Oh
the
gosh.
best. How old are
Oh
your
my
kids
gosh.
now?
I only have one. He's 5, so
Oh, okay.
turning
So
6.
you have a Gen
Mom.
Alpha. So you got to watch all the Gen Alpha TikToks so you understand their
Bussin'.
lingo. It's kind of like when we used to say like gag me with a spoon and like, and our parents were like, what are you saying? So
Well, he says bro. He calls me bro.
bro.
Thanks, bro.
And for some reason, Ohio is a really big word among the Gen Alphas. And everything is
gotta
like,
Google
ooh,
this.
Ohio. And I said to my son, I go, what is up with Ohio? Like, why do we hate on Ohio? He goes, because it's so mid. Like, nothing good or bad comes out of Ohio. And I was like, I don't
Oh, is that
know
what
that we
mid
can say
means?
that. I mean, I
Okay.
feel like some things probably are good in Ohio, but I don't know. I mean, I haven't really been to
I
Ohio.
feel
It's not a
bad for
state
people
that
that live in Ohio.
I don't
My
really think about
gosh.
Ohio really ever. So, but like they say, it's like Skibbity Ohio Alpha Riz. I go, oh gosh,
Oh my
I'm going to need a
God, no.
dictionary. So I try to
Yeah.
like watch it so I know. And then if I say it, he goes, Mama, no, you cannot use the lingo. But bussin'
Okay.
is like amazing.
Bussin'.
It'd be like
Okay.
awesome
Like
for our generation.
short form for busting?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's
Busting?
like,
I
yeah,
don't know.
like it's just the other one they use is slay for everything. Oh my gosh.
Slay.
You slay. And I'll be like, does that mean that you like the dinner? Yeah, that's what that means.
Okay.
Mama, you slay.
More
Okay. I think I
fake
heard
chicken.
RuPaul say it one time, so I'm going to go with it.
Amazing. And do you admire anyone in the food world? Like anyone that you love to watch? I mean, not to mimic their recipes, obviously, but just to watch. And,
Well, you know, we were big Top Chef fans back when it came out. We
Oh,
were like,
yeah.
before we had kids, BK, before kids, my husband and I would watch it religiously. And then we met Richard Blais one time, who was, I think, the
Whoa.
season 1 winner. I think he was the season 1 winner. Anyway, we met him. He was super delightful. He was at a food, kind of a food fair, I guess, whatever you call that. And
Festival,
then
yeah.
the Voltaggio, the restaurant Voltaggio in Maryland, the Voltaggio brothers, they own Volt. They were, I like their food. I'm not going to cook their food. And they kind of look a little bit like they would be assholes. But, you know, male chefs, you know. But if I had to cook with a woman, like who, okay, I want Ina Garten's kitchen.
Yes.
I want her kitchen and the way
And
that
her
she
like
kind of,
breezy style.
right? But I would love to cook with Julia Childs. I think she'd be so much fun to cook with.
I
She'd be
would
like,
love
well,
to
now
cook with her.
we're going to stuff this bird. I'll be like, you go, Julia, you slay, sister. I'm just going to watch you and pretend like we're talking and drink wine together.
She was a trailblazer too.
And she did a lot after menopause.
Yes. She probably started her career in
She did. She did. I think she was
yeah.
over 40 when she did all that work.
She moved to France, yeah.
But I love her sense of humor and the way she just kind of made it so accessible for everybody. So if I had to cook with someone, it would be Julia Child.
Yes, I love it. I love that.
I'm not deboning a duck though. I'm not doing that.
You'll just be like sprinkling the sea salt.
Yeah, I'll be her sous chef. I'll be like, what do you need me to do? But I'm not deboning anything.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm a butcher's daughter, so I deboned a lot of
You've done a lot
in
of
my
that.
time. Yeah. Which I don't really want to do ever again. Thank you. But I paid my dues.
You certainly have.
And now just to wrap up, what do you want to tell women about menopause? What kind of advice would you give? What would be your parting words? If you can tell women 3 things, what would be their, takeaways from, chatting with you or getting to know a little bit more about their journey?
Yes. So I would say that it can really happen at any age. The symptoms can happen at any age. And it's my women in the early 40s who feel the most confused and left out of the conversation. And I say there's always 1 year in your 40s that you feel like complete ass and you think this is where I go to die. I say, if we can get you through that 1 year, mine was at 42. If we can get you through that 1 year, it gets better. And so I say, like, start looking at your symptoms early. Like, start chronicling. You're not crazy. You're not crazy. This is just reverse puberty. So remember what you were like when you went through puberty. I was a horrible child in puberty. I was a bitch to everybody, I think. So I'm probably going to be a bitch on the way out too, probably is what I figured. So I just warned everybody. I'm like, mama may be a little cranky. I mean, I'm better at monitoring, and like adulting through my symptoms. But, and so I just go to quiet time. So I would say, don't worry if you're starting to feel that way. That is completely normal. You would tell your kids, hey, this is understandable. This is a normal process. So the same thing applies to them like that. 2, I would say is don't just listen to what your friends are saying. I mean, have the conversation with your friends for sure. But if they're like, oh, you only have to have this, or, oh, that's not a symptom, or that, find your own research place that you enjoy and talk about it with your friends, but just kind of keep it kind of a little bit personal too. But so if they say, well, we're all size 2 and we can eat whatever we want to, like J-Lo supposedly eats whatever she wants to, whatever, or she doesn't do Botox, whatever. Fine. J-Lo,
sure
that's fine, honey. You sold your soul to the devil. Fine. Although I think she uses the filter, Botox, and all of it. But she's got a team to make her J-Lo. I mean, let's be honest. So
she's picture perfect.
So it's don't compare yourself to the other women in your age or the age. Look above you. Look to those 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old women and say, what is it I love about them? They're funny. They're authentic. They're bright. They still have a vivaciousness that I love. That's what we're looking to build. You're not going to look like you're 20 when you're 40, nor should we want to. We want to look like we've had some years on our face because that shows that we have experience. And I would say the third thing is if you've been gaslit before or you've been told, don't worry about it, or your provider is not listening to you, don't take it personally. It's their limitation, not yours. And we just keep looking for the next person that can help us. And be your own advocate, be an agent of your health is start it now. And by the time you're Medicare or 65 or beyond, you'll know how to do it for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. That was so much fun. I love chatting all things menopause, perimenopause, food with you. Can people find you? Where can people find your information or sign up for your masterclass? Tell us.
Yes. So we're releasing the class on June 1st, along with a community, safe community for women. So my website is menopauserocks.com. Because again, I love rock and roll. I'm wearing my Nirvana shirt today.
Wow.
I'm all about the music. And they can find information there. It's just a website there to sign up for emails. I generally do not send out like a ton of emails because I'm full-time working, but I will send out emails. They're usually kind of like informative. And I hold a monthly webinar for women that is free.
Amazing.
We're doing one on Monday on sex and menopause. We did one on heart health and menopause. And I usually will bring in some kind of other specialist and we'll have a conversation kind of like this about, what do I look at for sex in menopause? Or what do I look at for weight gain in menopause?
Right.
And so we do all that too. So just get on the list. That's the thing.
Get on the list.
Is key.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Heather, and have a wonderful day. And I can't wait to share this with our audience and just keep following all your amazing stuff. So thank you.
Thank you. It was so nice to be here. And after our conversation, now I'm hungry.
Go I'll give you 20 minutes. Report back what you made.
20 minutes, 5 ingredients. I'm going to go do it. Do it.
Have a great day.